Hey, and welcome to episode number 18 of Nobody Told Me with Mike and Blaine. And I think we took another couple weeks off. I'm a terrible partner. I mean, because I'm always trying to push it, I'm always trying to move it. But I am with Blaine Birch, and this time he's not in Canada. He's in a second home in Scottsdale, right? Hey, Blaine.
Scottsdale. So this is the background for the next little while. You can see I have vinyl, and I actually have a record player right here. So I listen to vinyl down here just for something different. And so I actually was here last week for Thanksgiving. I made it down in time for Thanksgiving. So we were both just eating too much food and relaxing too much to do this. So we missed a week, but we're back at her.
Okay, so I know the hip and trendiness of vinyl. A friend of ours got one for Christmas last year, and we started her a record collection. And during the Christmas party, we were all flipping through records, and we said, what a colossal pain in the ass. I'm glad we got iPods.
It is like I'm a Spotify junkie, I'll admit it. And I've got playlists coming through my ears, and in the car, and like I'm on it all the time. What I liked about vinyl, and I don't know where I got started with this. I think I saw a record shop one time, bought a record, wanted to listen to it, bought the record player. It's kind of fun to listen to a record where you're listening to the side one, side two, the entire album in the order that they intended it. And so I kind of like it. It's somehow nostalgic and relaxing to me. So I wouldn't say I'm a junkie, but I do, when I'm working here, I like to throw on an album, and I find it just relaxing somehow. So even with the pain in the ass part.
Well, flipping the record, that type of stuff. I mean, some of the static.
Yeah, exactly.
We were in the party. We're like going, I don't think there's been any music on for like 20 minutes.
Oh, they're awful for parties because you have to stay on top of the bloody thing. No, this actually gets me to move instead of hunched over the keyboard or Zoom. It actually gets me to move every once in a while, which is not bad.
That's funny. So this is episode 18. And what we're going to talk about today is how to really turn an event into a gold mine, right? So episode 18, into a gold mine. I don't know if you noticed it, but our listeners are coming up. Our downloads are coming up. We even have people watching us on YouTube, right? So I don't know if you saw that or not, a few views here and there. I mean, so I can feel it. It's starting to happen.
Starting to grow, and they'll probably watch us once and then go, these guys are better on audio.
Yeah, that's right.
So look at that guy.
Face for audio. That's right.
Yeah, exactly.
But, hey, what are you drinking today? What are we having?
Okay, so this is I'm of course now out of the Alberta market. So what I brought in, and this is not a Phoenix company. This is Hubbard's Cave. And I love these guys. I love their beer. And this is Zacaton. And I just got to tell you, it's a 12% imperial stout. Okay, this is a mouthful. Fermented on toasted oak with almond flour, cocoa powder, cinnamon sticks, vanilla beans, ancho chilies. I don't even know how to pronounce that. Galua chilies and habanero chilies. And so I took a couple of sips, and also I'm like, I feel a little bit of a burn. Oh, it's got 3 different kinds of chilies in it. That's why. But it is absolutely delicious. And now I'm embarrassed because I can't remember where Hubbard's Cave is. Brewed at Illinois. They're in Illinois, and Niles, Illinois.
Oh wow!
A really terrific beer. This Hubbard's Cave. Their barrel aged stouts and their imperial stouts are delicious, and they're also just kind of neat. They always have really, I don't know, kind of bizarre ones. But this one I've actually really enjoyed. It's quite different. So.
It seems like with the ingredient list, you're baking a pie.
It sounds like it sounds like a pie. And when I grabbed it, I'm just like, oh, another Hubbard's Cave stout. So I just grabbed it and threw it in the cart. And then it was literally just a few minutes ago, and I went, this has got everything in it and a bunch of chilies. So, but it's kind of fun. So, what do you got going?
What's funny, and I swear we don't plan this, right? But you've got a kind of a Spanish type theme right there with that beer, right? With the chilies, the chilies,
cinnamon. Yeah,
you've got that. I chose another local Texas brewery, and it's called Seven Spanish Angels. It's by Brazos Valley Brewing Company, right? So that's kind of halfway between Austin. If you draw a line between Austin and Houston, they're kind of right there in the middle. This Brenham, they're in Brenham, Texas. But Seven Spanish Angels was the Willie Nelson and Ray Charles song about a couple that was in love and they were running from the law, and it's kind of their final shootout with the law, right? And Seven Spanish Angels, kind of what flew over the scene, those type of things. But it's a cold brewed coffee ale, right? And I haven't tasted it yet, but yeah, here you are with the cinnamon, the cocoa, those type of things, with the Spanish flair, and I did the same. So, cheers to Brazos Valley.
Yeah, some kind of ESP between the two of us, I think, which is kind of cool. Oh, I should put my little Hubbard's Cave back on. There, you can kind of see it in the background.
I mean, I'm sure you've had coffee stouts or something like that, coffee ales before, but think cold brew now. So think Starbucks cold brew iced coffee in an ale, man. Really nice, really nice.
Nice, yeah. And there's a difference between cold brew. It's a different flavored coffee, like a different sort of softer coffee. It's I kind of like it actually. So I see where you're going there.
Yeah, that is pretty good. It's something different. All right. Plus, it says good time in beer on it. I mean, everybody wants a good time in beer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's funny because every time I take a sip and I get that burn down here, I'm like, well, that's different. I just like I'll have to get used to it, but it's good.
Okay, so we're talking about events, all right, and believe it or not, this last month I did 2 huge conferences, and here's what I can tell you: there are a tremendous amount of work before, during, and after, and I think that's what we should talk about today because it's not something you just say, "Hey, you know what? They're having this show down in Houston next week. Let's go."
Yeah, no,
that's not the way you take your company to an event or even plan your own event. So, what about you? Have you had some experience putting on events or going to them?
Yeah, like when I had my creative agency, we were at events all the time, and there's the ones that we were religious about going to was Banff New Media and Banff Television, because we were pitching a lot of some television properties and joint properties with interactives and stuff. That was my first experience where we were going like every year to those and had to make something happen at those events. And then we were at Kid Screen in New York, and we were in like South by Southwest, the most famous one in Austin. That was a lot of fun, by the way. That was a great conference. And a bunch of like we were just at so many conferences. And then now that we've shifted over to Dry Run, I'm at the QuickBooks Online conference and the Sage Intact conference, and they never go away. But the one thing I'll agree with you is we learned after the first couple times going, you can't show up. You have to do so much pre-work to make it valuable. And then you have all this follow-up. And if you do that pre-work and all that follow-up, it bears fruit. And I will share one thing with you, because we got a customer out of Australia last week. We met him 2 years ago in Vegas, I think, at a conference.
Yeah.
That's how long some of these sales cycles can be, right?
Well, I mean, but the thing is, I mean, you stayed in front of him, you kept your brand in front of him, and eventually when he was ready, he knew where to go. Right. So here's the thing. All right. And you might have a different philosophy, but to me, it's a necessary evil, double-edged sword. You call it what it is, but it's a huge amount of resources for maybe not an immediate, like you're talking about, an immediate impact, right? It's a huge amount.
Yeah, you're like we basically always said, we'll go into these conferences expecting to not make it time, but you're building brand, you're building a reputation, you're building things that are not measurable. And so when we say not a dime, it's like we're not going to walk out necessarily with a bunch of deals in our pocket. That's okay, because when you have a booth, let's say at a conference like this, you're building relationships, you're building the brand, you're showing that you're credible, you're building trust in your company. All of these things a lot of times aren't that measurable, but they're critical through the rest of the year to closing those deals, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, you're hoping that you're building your lead list, and targeting the right people, right? Rather than just buying a list or, doing something crazy to try to get people to come in. Like, I'll give you $5, put your email in. No, what you want is the right people who need your solution. And maybe it's not the right time, but you know who they are. You've identified the right people.
Yeah. Yeah. And like when we were, The difference now is we actually have to have a booth and do the booth stuff. When we were with my creative agency, we never ever had a booth. But I remember we would we would sign up for the conference. We would get the conference list. We would reach out to everybody that we would do research on all of the people in there. Who are they? Who's a good fit? Who do I got to talk to? Then we would reach out to them when we would set up meetings. And then when we get there, you would set up meetings and get introduced to the next person, set up another meeting. And it just felt like you were running all day from meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting. I don't even know if we went to barely any of the actual sessions because it was just meeting. In fact, a friend of ours, really successful television producer, would the last year we were there, he said, "Yeah, let's meet." I'm at the he was basically across the street in the bar or something. Hey, come down and meet me there. We went and he was like, "Yeah, no, I don't even buy a pass anymore. I just book them. Everybody's here. They just walk across the street and meet me." That's a damn good idea. Like, save all that money. And I'll tell you that in Banff there, we always said we made more money in the bars than anywhere else. So you kind of do a little bit of networking during the day, but then in the evening, we would go from place to place. We would meet up with all these people that we met from all over the place. You develop those relationships. And then, then at the end of the night, everyone would end up in the St. James, was this bar in Banff. And that's where those relationships really were built, and you got to talk with people. So there's so many layers to it. But like you said, you can't just show up and go, "Here's my booth," and stand there and hope for the best, because it's going to be a rough ride.
No, and I'll tell you what, I mean, in the end of October, I went to Scale New Heights up there in Fort Worth. It's kind of the first in-person one that I went to since the pandemic, right? So here's what I found out. If I wasn't in the booth, I was in a meeting or I was at a social event, bar otherwise. I mean, and I'm not in conference shape. I found that out too, right? Because after day 3, I'm like going, "Damn, I'm ready to go home. I'm tired. I don't know if I can drink another beer."
Yeah, they're exhausting. Yeah. And you'll relate to this, the last afternoon of a conference, like the last 3 hours, almost everyone's left and you're so tired you just want to die, but it's like, can't really walk away from the booth, right? Like that'd be kind of lame. So it's just awful.
You know what? And again, at Scale New Heights, 3 years in a row, Joe Woodard has asked me to speak, and he puts me on as the last session. So I'm a great closer. I'm like the closer people stick around for, or he doesn't like me and he says, "I don't care if you show up or not."
You got to tell him next year. It's like, I've done 3. I've done the tour for you. You got to put me first. Got to put me second, because then you're fresh.
Fresh, yeah. When people are
and you can leave if you want to.
Now, you said something a little bit earlier that I always say, right? I always say is that we're talking about credibility and trust. People see you, they see the brand, they see that you're real. You're not some website that, they don't know what's behind it. You're not vaporware. They can put their hands on it, touch you. But I think here's what happens, at least in this space that I'm working in now, that if you go to one, you almost have to go again and again and again, or else they think, "Oh, they died." That company's dead, right? I mean, if they don't see you after that first one, you got to stay in front of them somehow, or they think that the company collapsed, because it happens so often.
Yeah, I've heard that. I've been told exactly the same thing, is that you pick because you can't go to every conference.
Right. Yeah.
You got to pick your 3 conferences a year, be there religiously, at least for 4 years in a row, and then you might be able to shift it up. But you have to establish that. But it feels to me like you pretty much have to be there, every year. And it's tough because those booths are so expensive. And I'm not convinced that you get that credibility in that side, but man, you could go there and make as much or more money walking around and networking and talking with people. But you kind of have to have the big expensive booth to show that you're alive and kicking.
Well, early on, right before we started having the regular monthly recurring revenue and those type of things, early on at Finnegraph, they had the 3 big shows, right? You had Scale New Heights, then you had another one's called SleaterCon that became Accountex, and then QuickBooks Connect. And we're like, "Oh, man, we can't put out that kind of money." We're talking $7,000 for the booth plus travel plus everything else. And again,
$15,000 every time. Yeah.
Easy, right? And
Yeah.
and you got to put aside some money for that social. You got to buy a few drinks. You got to do those type of things.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're talking 15 grand. So you're talking now 50 grand in conferences. That's a lot of $50 a month customers you need to bring in. Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
So here's what we did. We would go every other year, right? If I went to QuickBooks Connect in person with a booth this year, the next year I'd go as a participant. I was still there. People still saw me. It's just I didn't have a booth. So every other year we got the booth. And then we tried to stagger it and switch it out. So you saw my booth at Scale New Heights, maybe not at Account Text, where you saw it at QuickBooks Connect, but you didn't see it at Scale New Heights. So we went to all the conferences, but we saved the booth expense to just every other year.
Yeah. We actually did that too for the first time to QuickBooks Connect, like right before the pandemic started. We just said, I don't want to do a booth. In fact, I think we were too late to get the one we wanted or something. We're like, you know what, I don't want to spend the money on it, but we're going. And so we went, but what we did is we t-shirted up. Yeah. And so we had the branded t-shirt, but we had in big letters on the back, individual, like we got custom t-shirts for each person. So their name was across the back. And so, people could yell at you from across the conference and say, Barb, I want to talk with you, Barb, And so we tried to be these little walking, booths, and we'd had buttons we would give out and stickers and stuff. And we actually got our hand slapped a couple of times for giving someone a button one year, and because we hadn't bought a booth or whatever. That never bothered us much. But that was exactly what we did. Is we thought, we just can't do this every year. Let's go set up all these meetings, meet with all these people, have some exposure. We even gave some of our biggest sort of advocates t-shirts because they were wearing them around too. Yeah. So we had that exposure, but it was so much less money, right? And it was honestly a lot more fun than standing at a booth, especially in those dead times of the day. And you're just like, oh man, they're all in conference. No one wants to come and talk with us,
Yeah. Well, I think the organizers are doing better jobs now where they won't even have the exhibit all open except for specific hours. So like once around lunch, once at the end of the day. It makes it a lot easier, and you can get to some sessions. Yeah. You talk about t-shirts. I'm going to tell you what, the best t-shirt campaign I've ever seen. And there was only 2 t-shirts in the whole conference, and it was at QuickBooks Connect. So there's 5,000 people there, we'll say. Yeah. Maybe 4 or 5. I don't know what it is. But are you familiar with the name Seth David? He's like a QuickBooks trainer, kind of an influencer. He's actually right now he's in their advertising campaign. He's kind of a gray-haired, glasses gentleman, but Seth David, right? He became a household name. I remember the event that he became the household name because he and his partner, Eric Greenspan, came to QuickBooks Connect, and all they had was 2 t-shirts, right? And he didn't have a booth, or he was just an attendee. Yeah. He wore a t-shirt that says, I'm Seth David. And Eric wore a t-shirt that says, not Seth David. That was it. and they just walked around the conference and talked to people. But it's like I'm Seth David. And that way, when you started hearing the name, it just kind of became a thing. And his name got known throughout the QuickBooks community in that one event just by doing that.
Yeah. The first event that we went to, the first QuickBooks Connect we went to, and we were part of, I think we were given a booth in the small booth side because we were part of the Intuit top 10. So we were kind of selected as a new top 10 app or whatever. And I think at that time, I think our entire company was my co-founder, Tarek, me, and Barb. That was the entire company. And Barb's our director of client success. And she insisted before we leave, she goes, I need a Barb t-shirt. So I got like 3 or 4 t-shirts, just Barb in the giant letters on the shirt. That was it. And she's personable, just talking with people, but I actually think by the end of the conference, a lot of people knew Barb. They did not know who Tarek and I were, but they all knew Barb. And I got to tell you this little story because it was funny. Tarek and I went to grab some lunch, and it had been quiet. And then we walked back and we sat down at a table and we were having our lunch. We looked over, and all of a sudden there's this big crowd gathered around Barb. And I still remember the look in her face where she looks and she's like, what are you guys doing? And I look at Tarek, and he's sitting there chewing on his sandwich, and we just kind of sat there. And, good for you, you're rocking it. We knew by then, it's like, no one wants to talk to us. No one wants to talk to the founders. I want to talk with Barb, right? And it's just, she had built this brand in like 2 days from that.
Yeah, just her name. Simple, easy,
Mm.
And people are always, I mean, I wore that t-shirt even last year at an event. It just says cash flow Mike on it. And you get more people want to talk to you just because it says cash flow Mike, because they may have heard, the name, but they never seen you in person. They never talked to you. So it's like going, hey, are you cash flow Mike?
You know what? It's interesting because with the I was saying we had the last time we went, we had t-shirts made. And honestly, now that you're talking about it, I think they're a little too finicky. They had the dry run logo, they had a phrase, they had our names on the back, but they're kind of small. And honestly, it probably should have been Blaine with dry run. I think it probably would have worked better to have a little more impact. And I will tell you, there was one conference we were at. This was in Calgary a few years ago, and it was kind of fun because we gave some t-shirts away and we had a bunch of swag. And the swag we had were and they're really effective. We had little round stickers and little round buttons. And the one that everybody wanted was, it said, "Before shit gets real," little asterisks in the eye when the shit, right? And it became like people would come up to our oh yeah, we had a booth, and they'd come up to the booth and like, "Hey, do you got that shit gets real sticker, or do you got that button?" And they were just like, handing out like everybody wanted one. And they started to collect the stickers on the buttons with all these different phrases and put them on their lanyards. And one of the trippiest things, because this was like year 2 or 3 or whatever, one of the trippiest things was all of a sudden somebody said, "Hey, check out Twitter." And there was someone on Twitter, and it's in Calgary. She had a cowboy hat on, and she had posted a picture, and she had one of our t-shirts and her lanyard covered with all of our buttons and swag. And she had said, and she made, like, I can't remember what exactly it was, but this comment about dry run. And it was just like, oh, that is so cool. Like, she just had all of this stuff and was so kind of into it. And it was just such a fun thing to see, that it's like, wow, that's, so much impact, and got onto social, and all these people liking it and everything, just because we gave away a t-shirt and a few buttons, right?
What's funny about social is you can't start it. Right. You're the company, you're the brand. You can't start. It takes somebody else to do something unexpected to get something to go viral. So it's such a weird phenomenon, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing, is you try stuff and you just don't know what's going to hook and what's going to make a difference. But it was a good little bit of a lesson too, is that, man, you can spend a lot of money on stuff, and sometimes it's something hooks for whatever reason, right?
My philosophy on what you called swag, right? You call it swag. Right? I stopped calling it that. I started calling it SPA, SPAW, instead of SWAG. SPA is stuff people actually want. Swag is shit we actually get.
Yeah, that's a good call. Exactly.
but it puts your mind frame when you're buying it as a company. You're like going, is this something people actually want, or is it what they actually get? Right. So like this year with Truly, we I'll say sold out, because usually I get, if it's 800 people at a conference, I might get 250. Right. Because you're never going to get everybody at the conference. So I usually try to get about a quarter, a third to a quarter, somewhere in there, just whatever the feel is.
Yeah.
We were out in the first day and a half, because we bought these. Everybody's liking notebooks and stuff now. Right. I mean, heck, I even go through notebooks like crazy.
Yep.
But cork, it's a cork cover with a nice band at the bottom with just our logo on it. And those things went crazy, just out the door. Just people wanted them. So, because, and then it helps that, the other companies had swag, like a $2, speaker, a Bluetooth speaker and stuff like that. Little stuff I don't really want that.
I got to tell you, one of my swag stories from one of our first years. I don't even remember which conference. Well, I think it was in San Jose, actually. And so here's this thing, don't gamble with your cash flow.
Yeah.
They're little decks.
It's playing cards.
And,
cool. Yeah.
So what I did, because it's too cheap. I can't afford this stuff. So what I did is I found these little mini playing cards on like Amazon or eBay or something. I bought an entire box of them. It was like $50 or something. It was not expensive. And then the label is just like I think it's like a business card size sticker from like Moo. And then I made the little label, it goes inside. And then my wife and I put the stickers onto all these. And I found this the other day sitting on my desk here. And I'm like, oh, those cards, I forgot about them. But what was so funny is, so I can't remember how many cards with me when I went to San Jose. And so I had my backpack, and I only have carry-on because I'm like, I'm not checking anything. So I got my little thing, but my backpack I had full of, I don't know how many of the, like probably 100 packs of cards. So I get to security and it gets scanned, and all of a sudden I get pulled aside. The guy's like,
what the hell is that?
What's in your bag? I'm like, oh, it's just swag. It's just a bunch of little playing cards. He goes, I want to open that up for me. He goes, because it looks like a bunch of blocks of C4. I'm like, oh, that was not the intention. Right? So he opened it up, and he looked at every deck. He looked at each one and went, yeah, cards. Yeah, cards. Yeah. He looked at all of them, and like, nice guy after that. He's like, oh yeah, okay, got you, got what you have. But I got to tell you, I was a little bit, when he said it looks like blocks of C4, like, I'm looking to see if I'm getting like taken down, right? Like, oh shit, that's not good.
Step in this other room.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the glove. And but they actually went over really well, because they were just these little cards, but super inexpensive, because swag can get expensive. And I like, all of that cost me like, I don't know, like $100. Like, it was so cheap, and they were really effective.
So what's a good price point for you, like per unit, per item, right?
Oh man, like, I'm so cheap. Like, I want it under $1, right? But you know, the difference too is, what are your customers worth and all that. Like, our customer value keeps going up. So now it's a little different, but it's also I don't know if it like, does it really do anything down the road to sell? I don't know if it does. You know, I really question it. It's fun to have something to give out. Hopefully it attracts people to the booth, but I'll tell you, like, those stickers that said, you know, before shit gets real, or robots can't, we had all these fun little stickers. They were probably 5 cents each, and people would come by. Or the buttons, I don't know if I have any buttons around here, little tiny buttons. They would come by asking for them, and they were probably a few cents each. And that was, I will do that again, because they would put them on their lanyard. It was just like Office Space with the flare. The flare. They would have them stretch all the way down there. And we just, the first year we did that, we're like, wow, that is the cheapest advertising. We could have given them like a clock radio, or not a clock radio, but a Bluetooth speaker. It would have gone in a bag. They wore that stuff the entire conference. And it was like, that was amazing. Oh, and they put them on the laptops. And it was so cool to walk by and see a laptop or someone's iPad or something, and they've got our stickers on them. Like, yeah, that's pretty slick. That's pretty cool. So
I'm gonna steal the idea.
I would do them all day long. A fun little phrase, and they like, they're the cheapest, most, you know, those and buttons were the best things we ever did, and so cheap, right?
But you know, I mean, we tried to target this year between $4 and $12, right? And that's where we came up. I think for like $9 or $10, we came up with the notebooks. In the one price. But here's my thing on Swag Spy. You don't want it so good that people only come to your booth to get that, unless it's cheap, right? Unless it's cheap, because you want them to come by your booth to talk to you about your product, right? So there's a trade-off between the two, right? Which is, you know, are you just coming to me for my, you know, super goodie, or are you coming here because you actually think our product can help you? So there's a trade-off there, because I've been on both sides of it, where I got a ton of leads and they were half garbage, right? So you just waste time chasing them down, like, oh no, we're not doing that. Or and you give away a ton of goods, so you get some brand out of it. But if you're going to do that, do what you just did. Do stickers and buttons, and get anybody that comes. And it would just like walking billboards. It was unbelievable. The other thing that I saw, a friend of ours with I want to say Amazon A to Z. The name just popped right out of my head. They're from Australia. They do They do Amazon tracking and stuff, right? Through QuickBooks.
I want to know their name now because I'd like to give them a pump because we're talking about them. But what they did is they actually went and they found it like a discount place where they were got a really good deal, not a swag place, a discount place where they were clearing out, as far as I remember, these merino wool socks. And so they got what would be really expensive, really good socks. And I have a pair somewhere here. And they got all these made. And then basically they threw their sticker on. So what it ended up being was really a high value item. Didn't cost them much at all. But like you, is were people just coming to their booth to get the socks? Maybe, but they worked so well for, you know, quite a good price. And it's because they didn't go in order and get all they just went like, yeah, I found a place that's closing out like a bunch of socks. They're from Australia. They could get all these merino. That's kind of like the cards for me. It's like, can we do something that is really cool, but I don't have like, it can be out of the box and I can find a deal on it.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually like that. And I'll tell you what, here's another one that I saw at Scale New Heights. I'm like going, God, that was a good idea. And believe it or not, it was from Path by Simplex, right? My old company. And they came up with an idea. I'm like going, man, that was really clever. What they did was everybody that came to the booth got a number, right? Just a circle number. And they just put it on their badge. So they walked around with this number and you were supposed to find your match. So if I got a number 7, I'm going through, you know, 1,000 people trying to find another number 7. And then we could both come back to the booth and get a cash prize. Yeah, I don't know. I think it was like $5 or $10 or something like that. Nice. And all you had to do was find them. But what happened was everybody's wearing these branded logos, just a sticker on the name tag. And then in the app, people started sharing photos. Hey, I got number 7. Meet me here. Hey, you know, contact me. You know, DM me. Nice. So they were getting people to share, just trying to find their match on the app. I'm like going, man, that was really good. That was such a good idea. So yeah, I might steal that one too.
Oh yeah, I would. Like, man, it's like I'm almost afraid that I said this. I'm like, so many people can go with stickers and buttons now. They work. But you know, part of it too is what conference are you at too, and what is a crowd like, and what are they into? And that's I learned that at the Cybos conference right after we launched. We were selected as a top, I don't know, 20, 30, whatever fintech app in Canada. And we got invited to this conference in Toronto because it was FinTech. And so, you know, I went there and Barb, who works for me as our first employee, she came and met me there and we walked into the conference and it was kind of weird. We went in and we had to go through like really high security, like airport security. They scanned everything and all that. And I'm like, oh, yeah, get over yourself. Like it's a bloody conference, right? We go in and we got this little booth and we're kind of hanging out. And then Barb says, hey, go down to the trade show floor and see if you can get some stuff for my kids. I'm like, yeah, I'll go walk through. So I walked down there and I've never seen anything like this. Turns out it's all the biggest finance people and banks in the world. And this is like a big deal conference. So we walk in, well, all the booths are multi-million-dollar booths. Oh, wow. There were booths that have all of them had separate meeting rooms. Some of them were 2 stories. There was like all architectural design, like a Starbucks. Yeah. I walked in, holy crap, like, what am I doing here? And, you know, so I'm walking down, you know, and I'm like, thank goodness I dressed up a little bit here. So because everyone thinks like I'm a banker or something, like, you know, Deutsche Bank or something. Right. And no swag, but you could walk up and get like a lunch or a latte everywhere. So you'd walk up and they'd have baristas and all this stuff. And I'm like, this was not what it just a bizarre feeling. Right. But you would hate to be the one that showed up and had a booth with a bunch of swag because it was such a different atmosphere. It was just like, oh, this is not what I thought it was going to be. And, you know, it leads to this. I'm trying to remember who mentioned this to me, but it's kind of like you said, you go every other year. Someone I was talking with said they never buy a booth for the first year. They always, if they haven't been to the conference once, they go to attend first because they want to see what it's about, how you do it, who's there, and they just do their recon for an entire year.
Yeah, that was a strategy that we employed at Finograph, and it's called test then invest, right? I say, hey, no, if a new conference popped up, we go check it out first, and then the next year figure out a way to get in.
Probably like told me that because I knew somebody did. Probably you.
Oh,
You always have good insight on this stuff. So I probably, but it's something I remembered because it and doesn't always work. Like with the Intac conference, we were a new partner there. You kind of had to go. They twisted your arm not so delicately to go. So you're just going, right? But you learn a lot in that first year and trying to figure out who they are and how do you get to people, right?
Yeah. Well, all right. So the swag spot part, but there's so much more around it, right? Like, let's talk about before. Like before you go, you got to really plan out. So I've got a checklist, right? I've got a checklist. I mean, all the way down to, do I have an extension cord, right? So all of that stuff. Because the last thing, and it's happened to me at least once, where you get there and like, oh no, we don't have a charger, we don't have a cord, we don't have a block. There's always something you're missing. So now I built a checklist that I kind of go down through. But that's just the physical stuff. Do I got the boot? Do I got the monitor? Do I got the blah 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 down the road? But there's other things like, is my landing page set up? Are we tracking right? When leads come in, what do I do with them? What's our plan for beforehand? Who are we going to outreach to? How are we going to set up meetings? And we tried to build the messaging around the theme of the conference, which means like this year was unstoppable at Scaling New Heights. So everything we did is say, it was about being unstoppable and you can't be stopped and those type of things. So we tried to create all of our messaging around the theme. So it seemed like it would, build in better, right? Especially like the tracks, our messaging on our brochures at the booth. We looked at the tracks of, was it professional, I forget what it was, advisory services or practice management or whatever it is. But we built our messaging on the brochures that we gave out at the booth to match. Hey, while you're learning this track, these are the things you can employ with our product, right? We tried to match up what they were learning in each class to how our product fit into what they were learning. And it made for a better conversation. Like, hey, if you took so-and-so's thing today, here's how we kind of match up with that. I mean, but that's the thought that we always put in. I mean, I don't know what you mean.
It is true. Like we talked way too long about swag for something that really doesn't make a whole lot of difference at a conference because it's kind of fun to talk about.
It's always fun, right? What do I get?
Exactly. But it's totally true. It's the prep work, because I've done the same thing. You go through and I've been on the phone and talking with people and like, what kind of connections do I need for the monitor? What kind of because you don't want to get there and go, I have to find a Best Buy. Like that's happened before where it's like, I guess I'll go in an Uber and find a Best Buy because I need this weird ass plugin that nobody has or whatever. Right. So that there's prep on the tech side. There's, okay, what is on the screen? What is going to show? How is it going to explain it? What other signage is around? And that's just a physical side. But the other side for us was trying to set up meetings ahead of time, figuring out who's going, reaching out to our network. Are you going to be there? Are you going to be there? Are you going to be there? The benefit of that is, even if they're not there, you're sort of telling them, hey, we're going to be there. Yeah. And social, like posting on social, hey, we're going to be here. We're going to be at this booth. Come and see us and all that. Because again, it's on social media, on LinkedIn and everything. You're telling people we're at this conference. We're at this conference. We're out there. We're doing stuff. And then if you're going to be there, set up meetings. So we have set up all these meetings beforehand. And then the most important thing is, how are you tracking those leads? And you're doing the follow-up after. And that's, it's so important. If you have a system in place like that, you're going to make way more out of it.
Oh, easily. Right. And what about after? All right. So we collect the leads, and afterwards though, I always tend to wait at least a week or so, a week and a half after, before I touch base with anybody, because I feel like they get flooded. If there's 50 vendors on the floor, they're getting 50 emails.
Well, and they're also getting back to the office and they've been gone for a week or 4 or 5 days. We're not the priority. I would do exactly the same. Now I'm kind of wondering, do they get flooded 1 week after?
Yeah, 1 week after, yeah.
It's like exactly 1 week after, just everybody.
Maybe we're all doing that now. Maybe that's old news, right? So
yeah, maybe that was a bad idea. Maybe day one is the best one to get them, because we would do the same thing. Wait a week, reach out, get them into your funnels, get into the contact. And then of course, if you're going to the same conference every year, you can have a bit of that that repeat. And there was just, there's so much dancing around. There was, there's the booth, but it's also, like you said, it's like going for lunch, going for drinks, lining those people up, a meeting here, but knowing I got to go over there right after. But you have to make the most of it, because it is about, like there's a lot of attendees, I think, that are coming from a bigger business than that. They're just going for a bit of a vacation. But for us as vendors, you're going to make some, like, you want to move the needle. And so it's a very different atmosphere, right?
So talk about the booth, right? Because I've got kind of some ideas on that as well, where I like to reuse the structure as many times as I can. Meaning it's just I try to get the ones that just pop together. You can do it on a rolling case, because you can look terrible at one of these things too with too cheap a booth. You can look like these guys aren't going to be around for the next month, right? That's what they. So I try to get for like, we'll say I keep it under $2,000, and then get the whole package, right? Where the case becomes a podium. You got the pop up behind you. This last one we got has an arch coming out of it, so it looks a little different than just a straight pop up. Yeah. But that's just the structure. But what I like is it's just a stretch fabric that you pull over it. And if I want to change the messaging or change, but the product updates, or, it looks different, or we're doing something a little different, I just got to buy the fabric. I don't have to buy the whole structure again, right? It's just one piece of fabric. I just put it over the same structure. And those only cost, a couple $100, right? To change out the skin. We just call it reskin the booth. Yeah. What's been your experience? Because I've done everything from the pop-up stanchions where they just kind of all the way to a big, massive, booth, not 2 stories, but a nice booth. And I kind of like the pop-up 10x10s.
A lot of the booths we've had, and probably because we're a bit like, we're still a fairly young company, they would have the structure there. So it'd be like, okay, what have you got? You've got there's a monitor, you plug into it. Okay. And signage above the booth. And we would send them, here's artwork for the sign. Here's what would be on the screen. And or we would come up with what goes on the screen. We plug in our laptop. I remember there was one conference, I think it was Intuit, called us and said, we have a booth in Calgary for you. And I can't remember if it was like if they gave it to us or they gave us a really good deal or something. We got this booth. You have to be down there, right? Hell yeah, we'll be there. So then I'm checking, well, what's the booth? Well, the booth was just like, it was already pre-made. They had a table, and then it was a 10x10, but they had the curtains. It was all built, right? They had the curtains and everything. And so I'm phoning them, well, what is it? Well, it's got these curtains and stuff. How the heck are we going to? So I thought, well, I want to be someone to be able to see our booth from across the conference. So I went to a banner maker that did it was about a 4-foot by 10-foot banner. And this logo for Dry Room it was like this big. So I'm like, people are going to see it from across the conference. And so I got this logo, and then we had a tagline underneath, and then we had like some bullet points or something of what we offer. And, but I still remember, because I phoned up a few of these banner makers, and I'm like, well, I need it this afternoon. And I finally found one guy that he's like, I can do it. And so I literally drove across town. I just sat there and waited for him to do this banner. We went and grabbed some lunch, come back. And then I got this big box and tube. And the next day, back the car, driving down to Calgary. And then we zip tied it to their structure. And it was really cool, because a lot of the other places, they weren't like, they couldn't put their own booth up, or they could put some stuff up, or they put little stand things. And then we had this thing that basically covered up their booth. And it was just this massive logo. And it was awesome. And we got positioned where on the back wall, so you could see us from all the way across. I'm like, yeah, that worked. That actually worked really well. And so it's we just we've done, whatever you're always looking at what the requirements are. And if you have to bring your own stuff, or if they have half of it built, and it's always a pain.
All right. So remember when I said I was out of conference shape? So, and I have a checklist of everything I'm supposed to take, bring, do. I've got this checklist, go down it. Well, this first one back at Fort Worth, I drove. Instead of flying, I drove. So I packed the truck, right? I just packed the truck, put the booth, put, stuff in it. Yeah. I left all of the collateral in my garage and didn't realize it till I was 2 hours. It's a 4-hour drive from San Antonio to Fort Worth, 2 hours up. And I'm like, going,
Oh no.
and I turned around, but then I called Sandeep up in Toronto and told him, he goes, no, dude, we're going to have to go without it, because I would have missed the booth setup time, everything. I would have just missed it. Well, we were able to get my neighbor to come across and ship it to us overnight. So we ended up getting it. It only cost $200 to ship it overnight, but we were able to get it. But my gosh, that's the little thing. I had so much planning, so much prep.
Yeah.
But I was out of shape, and I'm like, oh man, I didn't double check that box that I packed and put it all together. It made it to the garage. Yeah. And for whatever reason, I set it down and I didn't put it in. Maybe I was moving something around in the back of the truck, and yeah, that box didn't make it in. But in my mind, I'd put everything in the truck, when I left.
And those to-do lists are so, and like for us, like, because we're always like, we leave, come to Arizona, we leave I have to-do lists, like prepping the house, prepping the drive, like, because otherwise it's so easy to forget stuff. But when you said conference prep, the first thing that popped in my mind was shoes. Oh, you have to have good, comfortable shoes, because you're standing on concrete for the bloody entire day. Yeah. And, walking is a relief because you're standing there so long. Sometimes they have chairs and that, but so often you're standing and talking and talking and talking. And I know for myself, if I don't have shoes that are good, like my back will give out, like I won't be able to survive. Right. And you forget about that kind of stuff till you get there and drink lots of water, try not to do 3 gallons of coffee. That's what happens.
All right. So have you ever tried to do an event yourself? Just you and inviting people to do something?
No, not to any sort of level of scale outside of like, Christmas cards for clients or Christmas party for clients and stuff. Not to any level that would be, I couldn't even imagine doing that.
All right. So here's my horrendous crash of an event. I'm gonna say 4 or 5 years ago, WeWork was kind of a hot thing in Seattle, yep. Right? The WeWork product, and I became friends with one of the director of operations that ran kind of the West Coast. And I thought, you know what I want to do? I want to do a business happy hour at all of them and be able to provide some drinks, maybe some pizza, present on Finograph, and get all of these businesses that are in WeWork, be able to market to them. And in my head, it was a fantastic idea. Right? It was like going, oh yeah, you have 116 businesses inside this WeWork, this one building. I'll come there. I'll bring my team. We'll feed them some drinks. We'll give them some pizza. I'll do a presentation. We'll get their email addresses, and then we'll market through, your email marketing to all the rest of them, and put it on the bulletin boards and everything else. Yeah. So the people in WeWorks are super struggling. They're not spending any money, but if you offer them something free, you'll get them all show up. Yeah. We had a lot of beer drank. We had a lot of wine drank. We had a lot of pizza ate, and we had 0 sales to show for it, because all of these startups, all of these 1, 2, 3 man shops, or people that are just using WeWork for a temporary, they have no interest in spending any money. Right? So, yeah.
How do you get to your perfect client with something like that? That's tricky, right?
Yeah, but we put the same amount of work and effort and everything into it. It was just, we chose the wrong group, right? For our product, because they weren't interested in financial analysis. They were interested in, oh my God, where do I get that first customer? Oh my God.
Yeah, exactly.
So we had the wrong group.
Yeah. We that's so important, and it's finding figuring out where is your perfect customer, and it's an expensive lesson to go to the wrong place, and that's in a lot of different ways with marketing, going to the wrong place. And it is so funny because I've been to, you have too, I'm sure, been to so many of those events, those happy hours, those dinners, and I've been to a billion of them and had so many free drinks and dinners and everything. And you wonder, man, do these guys make anything off of this? I've always wondered that, because it just, I remember a conference I was at in Seattle. I think it was AICPA Digital or something a couple of years ago. And there was an event I went to. And the only reason I remember it is because I got hold of some of those giant king crab legs.
Yeah.
And free, like free drinks. And I'm like, that's king crab. That's amazing. And it was unbelievable. And, after I'm walking out of there going, probably 2 or 3 drinks and like a $80 meal. By the time I was done, and I don't even know if you ask me today, I have no idea who threw it. I have no idea. I just, hey, we're going to this, or okay, let's go. Right. Yeah, and so, yeah, you wonder, I wondered if maybe they do, maybe there's these ones that they really pick out the right prospects and get to them, but it's hard to imagine.
Well, I think when you get to a certain point, though, you have to make a big splash just to let people know you're still around, even if you don't need their business, right? I mean, does Pepsi really need to advertise? But yet they still do. Yeah. Right. It's one of those things. So you're like, they don't care if you buy. I mean, if I buy a 12-pack, that doesn't hurt or help Pepsi. I guess it helps a little bit, but I don't think they really care that I bought a 12-pack. I mean, so, but you get up to we'll say Bill.com. Bill.com goes, they have to make a big splash because they're now a big public company and people expect it. And there's always a company down below that's trying to get part of their business, right? So it's like brand protection, I think, is a certain point rather than acquiring customers.
Yeah, it's I'm so far from that but I think you're right, because I remember I mentioned when we were South by Southwest one year, and we would just go from these different parties to different parties, and honestly, Yahoo doesn't care if we're there, Google or whoever the heck it was, right? And throw a big party, give a bunch of free drinks, give pizza. They had pizza and everything, and who was there that would move the needle for Yahoo? No, they didn't care. I think you're right. They just wanted to show we've got a thing, and it was only so many people were allowed in, and it was a big deal to get your ticket pass invite or whatever, right?
Yeah, exactly right. Hey, what'd you learn today? Anything?
Well, I like the swag versus spa analogy, even though swag is not that important. Do not want to overemphasize swag does not do that much for you. But I think the emphasis, we're on the same page, is it's prep beforehand, follow up after, and taking care of the details. Because it's you're putting a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of money into it. Prep beforehand and take care of those details to make the most of it.
Every detail matters. I mean, because it's your brand on display for everybody. If you have a janky presence, if you got misspellings on your brochures, people won't trust your brand, right? They don't think that you're credible. So I think that's a big thing. So episode number 18 of Nobody Told Me, right? That you can turn an event into a gold mine. And we gave you some specific places to look for gold in the prep work before, in the execution with meetings, and with great exposure during, and then the follow-up afterwards. I think that's a great way to find gold in an event. I mean,
absolutely. And comfortable shoes.
And good shoes, right?
That's important.
Thank you to Seven Spanish Angels, and who was it?
Hubbard's Cave. Yeah, absolutely.
Hubbard's Cave. So, episode 18. If you haven't seen us on YouTube, go look and see what Blaine Birch looks like, especially with this new tan. This new tan he's going to get in Scottsdale, Arizona, and I'm gonna come visit him there. But you think we'll ever do one of these side by side at the same time?
I was just gonna say we should actually do one. Do it at the pub or my yard or something. We'll crack a couple beers, get the camera up, and do one. That'd be great.
Oh, we need a cooler if we're gonna be together.
That could happen. Well, except that the 12 percenters, a small cooler. Those are heavy. But no, that we should do a live one. That'd be a fun one. The Nobody Told Me live event.
That'd be awesome.
We'll do it.
Okay, yeah. Maybe we'll do that. Just Facebook Live and then record it this way or something like that. So
for sure.
Very cool. Very cool. So hey, pleasure. That's Blaine Birch. He is the author of Pandemic Cash Flow. If you haven't went and got that book from Amazon yet, go get it. Pandemic Cash Flow. I'm Mike Mylan, also known in the world as Cash Flow Mike, and we will see you next episode.